As production music grows in awareness and popularity, all while facing existential threats from oversaturation or AI, more and more libraries are starting to place a higher premium on uniqueness, that distinctive thing that you, as a human composer, can bring to their catalog. But what does that mean? And how can we even find our own voice when cues still need to be editor-friendly, with predictable structures, convey the emotion, but not pull focus, have a button ending, blah, blah, blah? Well, it means that we might need to get a little weird. And so, we're going to look at some ways that we can break conventions while still playing by production music rules on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and explore how you can grow your career as a production music composer. Plus, every week I give feedback on a cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community, and today we're going to be checking out an epic orchestral hip-hop cue written by Carlos Brown, so please be sure to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the audio on the go. I just want to thank you for spending part of your day with me. This episode is made possible by you, today's sponsor, the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the podcast, the channel, everything running. We are 100% community supported, so you're not going to hear any sponsored segments for plugins or mattresses. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Cues while also unlocking extra community perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom coaching sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or stick around, because we're going to be talking more about that a little bit later in today's episode. So, if you've been watching YouTube or listening to the news or anything, you've probably seen a lot of chatter about, AI. And even though we did an episode a year ago on AI, and I still believe that the robots aren't coming to take our jobs or anything, it has really risen into the consciousness of how can we help separate ourselves. And like I said in the intro, a lot of folks are much more aware of production music than they have been before. And so I have seen over the last several months how libraries are starting to look more and more for unique qualities in the cues that enter their catalog. And I believe that AI is coming for what the way I think of it is like the lowest hanging fruit. AI is going to gobble that up first. I think, if you're a composer, production music composer, and you just kind of crank out cue after cue after cue after cue, just kind of like an assembly line style, I don't know. I get the sense that your days are numbered, and I'm including myself in that as well. My days are numbered. I can't just bum 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 assembly line kind of just crank them out, because every cue and every type of cue we write is going to need some unique quality to it. Now, the challenge becomes is how do we balance that with needing to tick off all the boxes for editability and for making sure that it has, edit points and predictable phrasing and layering and structure and a button ending and one mood or one emotion and all of that. And that's the gig. And I think that's going to be the gig going forward. And I'm sure there's another AI episode coming down the road. And this really isn't necessarily about AI. It's just that I think it's forced libraries to take a hard look at what is really separating, the algorithm from what a human can do. And it is that unique quality. So for us, the challenge is how are we unique in our cues and bringing unique, distinctive elements to our cues without necessarily trying to be like mold breakingly original. And that's going way back to my artisan versus artist. So I think it's time for us artisans to up our game, up our artisan quality. And I've got some ways that we can do that to create some unconventional elements, to get a little weird and thinking weird for our cues, because I think those are the things that are going to help us stand out in the crowd, and help us appeal to a library looking, against the AI submissions and against the growing number of composers interested in this career. So I've got some examples, and I've got a list of things that we can do, as well as some examples of my own cues, which have been published. Many of them have been placed. I'm sure the video is going to get demonetized, which is totally fine, because the content ID will get tripped up. That's fine. That's fine. And I don't have necessarily examples for every single one of my points, but I want to talk about ways that we can add a unique, weird, outside the box, even though that phrase is really kind of almost cliche by now, but really outside of the norms of thinking, all within the construct of a production music cue. We have to keep that front and center. So the first thing is incorporating unconventional instrumentation. Maybe instruments that don't get a lot of love. Maybe instruments that have gone out of favor, finding crazy, weird ways to use instruments. But like some of the best money I spent last year was on one of these things. This is a jaw harp. I got it off of Amazon, and it sounds. Yep. And it has gone on an entire album's worth of Americana dramedy cues. And so I'm going to put a little bit of this in the background here. This is a cue called Cornbread on Arrival. And it has jaw harp coming up a little bit later, but it also is using contrabassoon down low, using banjo ukulele, and using a harmonica as the lead instrument. And I put this jaw harp across like nearly the whole album. I thought it worked really, really well. It's really, really funny. They're easy to play. They're really cheap. Oh, I'm not clocking my teeth. Here comes the jaw harp. And I also did some other things which we'll talk about a little bit later, such as like fusing genres. This has a electric piano, but you don't really think about electric piano in like a banjo and contrabassoon. And then we actually go into like this organ shout chorusy kind of thing. All right, so this jaw harp, I tell you what, it was like the best money I spent, and they're not that expensive, and I really, really like the jaw harp. And finding other unique sounds, this is called a thunder drum. It's just a tube with a wire, and we'll listen to a cue a little bit later that has this. I love collecting like little toys like that. Finding like using like native flute, this is this unconventional instrument using didgeridoo, using slide whistle, and we've already heard this earlier in the year. This is a Waltz of Shame. and I used a slide whistle. It turns out it ended up sounding a little too theremin-y. I'm going to fast forward. Yeah, so that slide whistle kind of pushed it into theremin territory, which put it into kind of Halloween places. But that was, again, thinking like, hey, there's a unique sound. This is a dramedy type cue, and so let's incorporate that and see what happens. Here's another dramedy cue called "There's a Mouse in the Hizzle," which has seen a ton of love over on Warner Brothers Discovery Channel stuff. And this is using unconventional instrumentation. It's a dramedy hip hop cue, and using unusual ways of playing a common instrument. In this case, we've got some ukulele coming up a little bit later. I'm going to fast forward it here. That is a ukulele played like a Strat, and it almost sounds like a Strat. And so that is taking an instrument that I have, that I enjoy playing, and playing it in a way that wouldn't necessarily get used before, or in another way. Not that I've seen, to create that kind of Fender Strat effect, that Fender Strat vibe. And it worked. And that cue gets a ton of love. Or here's another cue. This is called "Let's Be Friends." And this uses the body of the ukulele as a percussion instrument. And fast forward it here. And so that is me wiping. That's me wiping the ukulele. And it creates a shaker. And I know playing the body of the guitar as a percussion instrument is nothing really new, but just thinking of different ways, different unusual instruments, different ways of playing them, tuning them differently. Take your guitar, tune it differently, maybe play with pitch bending, maybe play with like quarter tone, scales, micro tuning, that kind of things. The idea is incorporating unconventional instrumentation into the cues that you are writing, and trying to be as unique, as distinctive as possible. And I know for a fact that ukulele has gotten me noticed, because this cue gets used, as well as several of the other cues that use that same technique. And I guess I'm giving it to you. Ukulele played like a Strat. But that didn't necessarily come out of, like, I'm not telling everybody to go buy a ukulele and learn Strat technique. It came out of what I was already doing and what I already had, and thinking of new ways to play the instruments I'm already playing, to use the sounds I already have. That's what I'm encouraging you to do. I'm not telling everybody to go buy a ukulele, even though I think every production music composer should own a ukulele, but that's a different discussion. I'm saying look around. What plugins do you use? What sounds do you already have access to? And how can you use them differently? Are there some instruments that you haven't used in a long time? Think something interesting like didgeridoo or hurdy-gurdy. Go explore the dark corners of some of your sample libraries and see if there's a gem in there that you can use on a cue to help separate you. Yeah. So unconventional instrumentation and unconventional ways of playing the instruments that you have. Next, fusing genres. This is another way that you can help stand out, add distinctiveness. Fusing genres. I think this is very, very helpful and is a way to add your own voice to this. For example, Americana dramedy, that's worked really well for me. Hip-hop dramedy, fusing traditional hip-hop vibes with with dramedy vibes. Yep, hip-hop techniques with dramedy techniques. Using like classical hip-hop, like classical music and hip-hop. This has worked extremely well for me. Specifically around Christmas time, I did epic arrangement of several Christmas carols or, Christmas music. And this one's called Dab of the Sugar Plums. And so far, this one's gotten love on the NFL on CBS every year. Then I've done one for Carol of the Bells. I've done another one, March to the Toy Soldiers. And so Dab of the Sugar Plums. And I took, this is public domain, so I took the sheet music and programmed it and created this cue using the same types of production techniques I've done for other kind of epic orchestral cues. Or blending styles like hip hop and rock, which isn't necessarily anything new, but taking a rock cue and a hip hop cue and just mashing them together. This one's called 86 The Whiskey, and this is in collaboration with my good friend, Donnie Wayne Smith. And that one has gotten some love. Recently, In Style Music ran a brief looking for Epic World, and I did a collaboration with the incomparable John Allen. And we did this cue, which is called Celts and Kilts. And this is like traditional piping. And he sent me the piping stems, and I did my kind of epic thing to it. Here's another blending. This is Outback Aggression. Speaking of didgeridoo. And so this is essentially taking like an epic cue, percussion type cue with didgeridoo. You can do the same thing, blending kind of like traditional Australian music, Aboriginal music with tension, like straight up tension music. And this cue, this is called Outback Intrigue and was placed on The Bachelor. You could strip away the didgeridoo from this cue, and what you end up with is a cue which is essentially a garden variety tension cue. So, mashing genres, especially genres that you're interested in, like what would happen if you took something like banjo, bluegrass music, and fused it with hip hop? I guess you would have hick hop at that point. I think, is that what it's called? Hick hop? Or what would happen if you take like EDM and fuse it with a waltz? Who knows? It's like the fusion cooking, like the equivalent of like a Korean taco. It's like a blending of styles, a blending of flavors, and putting them together. And they're not necessarily always going to work, but when it works, it can be really effective and add your own unique slant on this. And I would encourage you to do this. I would absolutely encourage you to do that. So that is fusing genres together with a few examples. The next thing that can really help you stand out, record things. Put your hands on an instrument, use shakers, guitars, flutes, sound effects, field recordings, whatever. Your own voice. Just record things. And you might sit here and you're not, I'm not a musician or I don't play anything, but man, if you can go like, and you have instruments attached to your body, and I can't tell you how important it is for us to not stay in the sample library the whole time. It's vital, and it's only going to get more important. And it crosses genres. Here's one. This is called Gotta Get Medieval, which I think we covered. This was one of my Year of Taxi cues, I believe. And that is a flute line using a native flute, an unconventional instrument. Yeah, that is a live flute recording. You know, with some other, production shenanigans with like stretching and bending and all of that stuff. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. Here's another one. This is called Damsel in the Stress, which uses some, altered tunings that sound like a honky-tonk piano. That's a live recorded triangle. Live recorded melodica, just a cheap Hohner melodica that I got on Amazon. Obviously, the piano, I think that's a keyscape piano. Now, I don't know if you can hear, well, there's the jaw harp again, which is a unique instrument, recorded. I didn't go look for like I didn't go look for the BBCSO jaw harp library. I didn't go find a deep multi-sampled jaw harp concerto instrument from 8DO or Heaviosity or whatever. I know, I just bought like a cheap jaw harp and recorded it like into this microphone, RE320 broadcast microphone. It's dynamic. It helps like with sound rejection and everything. And in this, I layered in me singing bass. Doom, doom, doom. Doom, doom. And you can hear me going. Yeah, I got kind of inspired by the in the summertime. In the summertime, you know that song. I think Mungo Jerry wrote that. Fast forward here. Yeah, just record things. Just turn on a microphone and record things. Instruments, your voice, field recordings using sounds. We're going to talk more about that later, how you can record your own thing and then bring it into a granular synth. More on that here in a second. But a cue that, a lo-fi cue that I wrote earlier this year, using a field recording of a fan. Just rhythmically cooking in the background. Now, as a lo-fi cue, you can get away with a lot more of this kind of ambience. But let's say that you're outside and you hear, like, I don't know, maybe they're doing construction. Turn on your phone's voice memo or whatever and record that rhythmic element and use it. Use it in your cue. What was it? Was it Tenant, I think, that used like rhythmic, like train track, I believe, like locomotive, and then was brought in and manipulated and all of that. But yeah, if you have, a bird that sings outside your studio nearly every morning, it's maybe autobiographical, then record it and do something with it. Yeah. And we've talked before about how recording will add a veneer of realism onto your cue, which is vital, which is a big reason to do this. But no matter how hard someone else tries, they will not be able to exactly duplicate your recording. They're not going to have your environment, plus your microphones and your access to your instruments that are sounding the way that yours do. It's one of the reasons on nearly every tension cue, I record like bowed cymbal so that I get a new, fresh recording every single time. And it sounds unique to the point where I think some folks have in the community have been like, yep, there's one of Dave's. There's his signature sound, that bowed cymbal sound. Which points back to point number one, which is unconventional ways of playing things. Get a cheap bow from a music store and see what you can try. Yep, I bow cymbal and I record that all the time. Shakers, absolutely. It just adds an extra. In Japanese cuisine, it would be like the umami, right? It's that extra special sauce that helps your cue stand out. And I'm not sure AI is going to necessarily be hip to that. Yet, maybe. Which leads me to my next point, which is incorporating electronics and synths, whether it's modular synthesis or granular synthesis. This is where it's fantastic to take some of those recordings and bring them into something like Omnisphere, or create your own sampler instruments. Bring them into whatever DAW you're working with. They have a sampler. And you can bring it in and start to create your own instruments from the sounds that you recorded. Here's one called Drone with the Wind with my signature bowed cymbal. That pad in the background, that is a flute, one of my native flute patches. Our flute drones that I brought in to Omnisphere and created my own instrument. All right, you remember that jaw harp from earlier? Well, here's the draw harp brought in to Omnisphere and turned into a synth pulse with the thunder drum. And see, the beauty of that is you can do all of those, like that wasn't all a bunch of crazy modulation thing. I'm sure there were modulations, but I mean, I was going, just did that, brought it in, and all of that organic filtering, that was all captured in the microphone. And I'm thrilled with these results. And if I said I will give you $1,000 to identify what sound I recorded, 999 of you would not have guessed jaw harp. Now, I'm not doing that for the record. But yeah, unconventional instrumentation, recorded, brought into a synth, and created a new instrument out of it. So we've got 3 of our elements happening here. Now, if I would have brought that in and created a, I don't know. Well, I guess I am. Am I fusing genre? It's not really a genre fusion, but using a jaw harp and a pulsing tension cue. That doesn't really, no, the tension doesn't really scream for jaw harp, but I thought it worked really, really well. Bringing in vocal samples and creating your own sampler instrument out of it. This is this is brand new. I published this week, or sent it off to the publisher this week. This is called White Whale, WIGHTWAIL. And this uses a couple of different sample manipulation techniques. First of all, we have the right? We have those brought into Serato sample and played like on a keyboard, like an instrument. And then we have which is another one-shot, a splice one-shot brought into the Logic sampler, so that I could do pitch bending and all these other effects and filtering with a mod wheel. And then we have another layer of vocals, the louder wail, which is manipulated, recorded audio from, again, splice one-shots here. So we have multiple sampling techniques, multiple audio manipulation, all brought in. All those upper synths, those are all vocal one-shots brought in to a sampler and made instruments out of them. Now, obviously, you need to know your way around the DAW. You need to know your way around the instruments that you're looking to use. Know how to do some of the things I was saying, like how would you automate the filter, or how would you attach the filter to the mod wheel, or how would you create loop zones in your sampler, all of those kind of things. And that does take a little bit of research, and I would encourage you to do that in whatever instrument you want to use. Like, I'm not saying go out and buy Omnisphere. In fact, don't buy Omnisphere to do this. I mean, there are simpler, less expensive ways to do these types of things. I just have Omnisphere, and Omnisphere is really good at this kind of thing, but it's definitely not the only game in town. But that little that ostinato, yeah, you could do that with the stock sampler that comes with your DAW. And whatever you want to use, just learn it, spend some time with it, spend some time playing, because at the end of the day, so much of this is about experimentation and play. Being sure to leave yourself enough time, give yourself enough bandwidth, meaning in your calendar or whatever, and just try new things, explore new things, see what works. Open the pantry, pull out some ingredients, and see what happens. If you have a plugin you've owned because you got Complete and it comes with a truckload of plugins that you've never tried, open one up, commit to using it, and see what happens. White Whale here has a couple of glaze patches. because I had to be reminded by Jeff LaPlante here in the 52 Qs community. I had to be reminded that, hey, you have a Glaze, and Glaze does a lot of this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. I've had it because it comes with Complete by Native Instruments, and I've never even thought to use it. And boom, there it is. Something I already had. Creating these sampler instruments just by taking a droney one-shot from Splice, dumping it into the Logic sampler, and creating my own instruments. It's hugely rewarding. We haven't even talked about that. You feel really good about yourself. You feel super creative. You feel like, man, I could do this all day. I can conquer the world. Yeah. And you're adding unique elements into your music that nobody else is going to have. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's about experimentation. It's about exploration. It's about play. So give yourself time to do that. Give yourself bandwidth to do that. So as a recap, unconventional instrumentation. What are some instruments that you have that you haven't ever really used in a while, or bringing in some new instruments to add flavor, or different tuning systems, or unconventional techniques on the instruments that you have. Second, genre fusions. Bringing genres together which typically don't work together. Americana dramedy. Dramedy hip-hop. Rock hip-hop. Epic Scottish music. Next, record something. Whether it's an instrument, whether it's your voice, whether it's field recordings, just turn on a microphone. If you have a phone, you have a microphone that is of a quality that you can do some of these things. Now, yes, you can if you want. You can get into like a setup like this. This is a Zoom H1N, and with a little, dead cat on it, and I've got a shock mount and all of that stuff. So if you want to, you can do this, but you don't need to do this. By the way, shout out to Marlon Gibbons, who did a video on this. Like, just go get one. These are not expensive at all. You don't have to get the full stand and the rig and all that. That's just me going obsessive compulsive over these kind of things. But record something. And then using synths, bringing in these recordings, digging into the plugins that you have, bringing in vocal samples, into creating your own synthesizers, creating your own instruments, maybe digging into some of the patches. It doesn't even have to be a recorded element, but just get into the synths and the plugins, the effects that you have to create new, unique, weird sounds, because those are going to be the things that are going to help separate you from the pack and from the algorithms. So those are a handful of things that I have worked out with some of my examples. I would love to hear from you. What are some things that you have done to stay weird in your production process, to add elements of originality or uniqueness and innovation? I would love to hear your ideas. Please let me know in the comments below. I do read all of those and really, really do appreciate it. But friends, remember, at the end of the day, it's about experimentation, exploration, and play. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to hear from Mrs. 52Q's, Shannon Croft, who's going to tell us all about how you can join the community. And when we return, we're going to be checking out an epic orchestral hip-hop cue written by Carlos Brown.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Cues community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52cues.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52cues.com.
All right, that was championship blows from Carlos Brown. Carlos, thank you so much for sending this along. I really enjoy this. There's a lot to love about this. Just out of the gate, that B section is fire. It's really, really good, as the kids say. Strings sound really, really good there, which brings me to my first main kind of thing here is the big brass blats feel a little long here, like and the brass in general, especially the high horns, they don't sound great. They sound kind of MIDI, and that is really thrown into sharp relief with those string sections come in. So overall, you've got this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, and you have this kind of pulsing, which I think really works well. And I would use that rhythm, that dotted quarter eighth note rhythm, with your brass blats, the big Brahms. So instead of just blam, I would go blump, blom, blump, blom, because right now the brass blats, the Brahms, if you will, and the 808 are just all on top of each other, and everything is really just kind of long, and it just turns into kind of a mush of rhythms. Bum, 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 bum. I love the energy of this. I love the progression. I think this is all working well. I would probably also bring in some staccato string action, just lightly. I wouldn't do the full melody here. Maybe you can just accent, but and here's another instance where I think we should alternate between staccato articulations and legato articulations. So instead of having I would have ba ba or ba ba da ba do da do, something where we're chopping up the rhythm just a little bit, making a little bit more staccato. Yeah, I would go ba ba da. No, ba ba da 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 don. And make sure that you are key switching or whatever. I'm assuming we're probably in Logic here. Make sure you're switching the articulations from the short notes, the staccato notes, to the legato notes. Because they're sounding like they're all just kind of mushing together. Like there, we have this 808 pop up, have this really nice descending line. Beam, boom, boom, boom. And everything is all mushy and extended that it gets lost. But this is great. I would bring 808 whole notes here. Boom. Boom. Just so it doesn't go quite so long with the absence of that really. We don't go for so long without the absence of like 30 to 50 hertz or so. Right, and so then we have our A plus our melody, we have our B, and then we have our A plus our B, and then we have A plus melody plus B. So I dig the arrangement. If we were going for sports, I think we could probably get away with doing this breakdown maybe a phrase earlier, maybe. Because right now we're about 8 bars. And then coming out of the button. Definitely bomb, bomb. See, the reason the staccato strings work is the articulation has changed. And it's just not working when... Yeah, it's just, I'm not feeling it. All right, so then we had an A plus a B, and then we had an A plus melody, and then we had A plus melody plus B. I think that's how this... See, I don't think we need this necessarily. I would probably, because we've already said what we need to say, right? And so have your B section, your A plus B, and I would probably go right to, let's see if I can hack this. So let's shorten that up. I would probably go right to that spot. So coming out of here. All right, now we're skipping that section and going right to the final section. Yeah, it doesn't feel like a dip of energy. It feels like the energy is pushing forward into that final button. And we're about 1:50 or so. So we're in good shape. Fantastic button. Really, really nice button. That works really, really well for me. Other than the low end being a little rumbly, I think we probably need to do some pull the low end out of the brass blats and then watch out those rhythms. The loudness, I think, works. The last thing I'll say is championship blows. I'm not sure that's working for me. And I'm thinking what you're thinking is like a boxing round. Like the guy is landing championship blows. But it's like I couldn't tell if it's that or if it's like championship sucks. You know, that kind of like, man, that blows. So I'm not sure that's as clear of a title. Championship knockout, maybe something like that. If you wanted to bring more kind of boxer metaphor. But Carlos, thank you so much for sending this along, and thank you for all of your continued support. This was sent along during our week 27 weekly feedback thread, and we put weekly feedback threads together every single week, and from these submissions, I will choose one and talk about it next week. And if you found that feedback helpful and that's something that you would like for your own music, your own cues, to check out everything from the mix, the title, the form, structure, harmonic choices, all of those things, then head over to 52cues.com/coaching, where you can order up your own feedback video. And while you're there, you can also check out my other coaching services, including one-on-one session, and sign up for the waiting list for our upcoming mastermind at the beginning of 2024. But that's going to do it for me. As always, a huge thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52Qs who help keep the lights on and everything going. Please know that I love and appreciate all of you. And you definitely want to tune in next week, where I'm going to be joined by 52Qs community member and demo writer, Michael Sine. He's going to talk about this whole side of the business that is utterly fascinating to me. You know, if you've ever bought, a sample library, and I have been known to buy a couple, maybe from one Matt Bowdler, aka The Unfinished, then chances are you've checked out some of those demo tracks. Did you know that those demo tracks are written by composers just like you and me? And Mike is going to unpack how all of that works, and I'm so excited to bring him on board next week. But that's going to do it for me. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you had a fantastic week 27, and I know that your week 28 is going to be amazing. How do I know that? Because I know, trust, and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52Qs podcast is copyright 2023 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.